Have you been growing in your knowledge of Jesus Christ? In our last video, we talked about how we can learn how we were made to live through having a deeper knowledge and appreciation for our Lord. I hope you've seen that to be the case. But there's still another trait that will help us to take part in God's nature. And that trait is self-control. This is the next characteristic that Peter encourages us to cultivate in 2 Peter chapter 1. But why do you think self-control might follow knowledge? As each of us grows in our knowledge of Jesus Christ, a contrast starts to develop between the sinful lifestyles that we've cultivated and the perfect image of God that is Jesus Christ our Lord. The Apostle Paul puts it perfectly in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 20 through 24. But that is not the way you learned Christ. Assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him, as the truth is in Jesus, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God, in true righteousness and holiness. This section starts with our idea from last time, that each of us is learning about Christ, but there is a specific outcome that pursuit ought to have. Knowing Jesus leads the faithful believer to put off the old self and put on the new self, which is fashioned in the very likeness of God once again. So, knowledge leads into self-control because as we come to know Jesus, we are faced with the battle of getting rid of the old and bringing in the new. That is an extremely challenging undertaking. And through this battle, we develop self-control. Look at what Paul teaches about self-control in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. These verses come right after a section where Paul basically tells the Corinthian Christians that he makes every decision in his life in light of trying to further the gospel. And so he gives us this illustration of what self-control is. It is the same trait that what we would call professional athletes have. Every part of their life is made into routine. Sleep, diet, exercise, learning, and training. They do this to achieve their goal, victory over an opponent. And we do too. But the opponent that we face is our old self, who has been corrupted by sinful desire. Here are a few questions to ask yourself. What part of your old self is still thriving in your new Christian life? What discipline could you put in your life to cut that off? Who could you ask for help in this pursuit of learning self-control? Self-control will demand a lot of you, but it will lead you to take a fuller part in God's nature.